Hi, I'm Ben and welcome to Field and Foley. My guest today is John Gale. As the head of audio at Creative Technology Ireland and the front of house engineer for the iconic artist Björk, John's experience spans across live, studio and post-production realms, making him a true maestro in the world of audio engineering. With an illustrious career that includes working with many renowned artists like Amy Winehouse, PJ Harvey and Florence and the Machine, John brings a wealth of experience to the table. So, John, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Maybe just as a start, can you briefly explain what a front of house engineer does? Because I'm pretty sure not all of our listeners are aware of what that is.
So the front of house engineer is the sound engineer. If you go to a live concert, he'll be the person, or she, person out front in the auditorium mixing what the audience hears. So there's normally two engineers mixing on site, one that's doing monitors for the sound that the band will hear on stage or in their in-ears, and then the front of house engineer is the person out front hearing what the audience is receiving.
Yeah, so you're saying if you're at the concert, try to find the guy and sit near him, so that's where it sounds best, right?
Well, arguably it would be you would hope it would be the best position in the auditorium. If you're listening to what they're listening to, you're listening to the best position and the best mix in the auditorium, but it doesn't always work out that way, to be honest. I have done a number of concerts where the front of house position is very compromised and not in a position which is great, and so that's where a bit of experience comes in, where you have to kind of learn to adjust, or maybe sometimes not trust your ears and just make adjustments based on a judgment call that. In fact, particularly on one project that I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, the first mixed position for the auditorium, we did all the pre-production and in the best position in the house, but when it actually came to the show, I was moved right to the back left hand of the auditorium underneath a surround sound speaker. So yeah, not the best place to mix from.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, how do you deal with that kind of situation? Because like, you cannot just run back and forth and listen and then adjust, right?
No, there are ways you could. In terms of double checking tonally, you could put a reference mic into a position where you would rather be, and use some sort of smart is the software I use, some analysis to give you at least an idea visually. But really you just have to learn the room and try and do your sound check in the best position possible, and then also be aware of how it sounds in the place you're going to be, and just kind of adjust accordingly. It's never ideal, and so like as a front of house engineer, I will always push for production for the best position I can get. If I'm given the choice, somewhere in the middle of the auditorium or a third to 2/3 back, ideally. But sometimes you also have problems because depending on the system design and what's possible, if you have subs on a left-right configuration, you get these power alleys where the sub bass in the room accumulates maybe in the center of the room, and then it cancels out in an alleyway, and then it reaccumulates. So you don't want to be in one of those positions where it's either too sub heavy or no sub at all. Now with good system design, we're trying to work around that these days, but every event has its own compromises, so you never quite know what you're walking into on a daily basis.
That makes sense, yeah. And you can't mess with physics. It's like at some point,
no,
yeah.
No, all you can do is fight for the best system design, but it's not always possible. If you can't get subs in a line under the stage, you might end up with a left-right sub configuration, and there's just nothing you can do.
Yeah, and one question that also pops up now that we're talking about it, like, if you're doing soundcheck, normally, of course, the arena is empty, right? And later on, there might be 2,000 people in there, so the sound is probably going to change a lot, right?
Yeah, it does. Although that very much depends on the arena. There are definitely some that are much better than others. There are some arenas that are horrifying, and actually, even with an audience in, it still sounds terrible. Or it's a fight. I won't name and shame any particular arena, but there's definitely one or two. We had one in Japan not long ago, which was just incredible. It was like mixing in a recording studio control room that had been like heavily treated, and when the audience came in, there was just no difference because they had done so much acoustic treatment to the room. It was practically like a perfect mix room that didn't change. But generally, if you do a sound check, you are aware that things will change. The low end might tighten up, or even the high frequency stuff. When you have bodies into a room and there's changes in temperature and humidity, all these things affect a live show. So we have ways of adapting to that with technology, with the system processing. The system engineer might be making adjustments to the PA as well. So based on readings that they might take when the audience is in. So it's kind of a balance between experience, knowing how much it's going to change in your head, and then just adapting when the audience is in. You will end up changing the overall EQ possibly, or adding a bit more reverb depending on whether it's dried up. It just really does depend. You have to adjust.
But that's very cool. It's cool to hear that's like a dynamic thing, and it's not like you set up and then you can just run the system and it's over, because that's what I always wondered. Like, just during the performance you might adjust things, but isn't it like a very stressful thing to do? Like, if you're in an arena with like thousands of people, and you could potentially like ruin the sound with the push of a button, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure some would say I have. But it's almost like an art. You have to just kind of the more you do it, the more experience you have, the more you get a feel for the different types of rooms you might be mixing in, and hopefully you kind of increase your ability to be able to adjust quickly. And it doesn't always come. Sometimes it will take a couple of songs. I remember when I first started out, somebody telling me like the first two songs are mine, especially on a festival. That's just don't talk to me. I don't want to hear any complaints until the third song in, because I just want that's me making my adjustments. That's my time, and I kind of stand by that as well. That you need to be given a few seconds or a few minutes to just get your stuff together when the changes happen. And also, when we're touring and we're doing festivals and stuff, sometimes you don't get sound checks. You're just line check. It's a line check, sometimes to headphones, and then you just go. That's it. First song is the time that you will work it out. So I was lucky. I did 5 or 6 years with the pop singer John Newman, and I could pretty much, if I heard a kick drum, one person shout down a vocal for a split second, just shout 1, 2, and a kick drum, I could probably tell how the PA was going to sound in the line check. And when I opened up the board, I had sort of like a 1-minute intro track, and based on that intro track, when we started the set, I would probably have it in a good place by that point, because we knew the set well enough, and we'd kind of, but you don't really know what you're gonna get in that scenario until you open up the PA and it starts. And sometimes it can be a bit seat of the pants.
Yeah, I can imagine. Very stressful indeed. Yeah, just and going back to where we met, because we met a little over a year ago now at a Björk concert, and it was the Cornucopia concert. And maybe we talk a bit about that first, because this one was very, very special. At least from my perspective, I was finally going to see Björk live, which was already great, but then we had this, I don't know, theater experience, which it wasn't really a concert. It was like a live theater, opera, mixture of everything, with great visuals, with great sound, and just we briefly talked about it before, over 100 microphones inputs at the same time. So yeah, maybe you can maybe sum it up a bit, what this kind of special show is about.
So the show you're talking about was called Cornucopia, and yeah, it was kind of quite a spectacle. As you say, more theatrical than a straight music pop show or rock show. I was already working with Björk on from her album Utopia. That was when I came on board, and she's always been kind of known for being innovative and doing completely different things on stage to anyone else, having instruments that nobody's ever seen. So I didn't really know what to expect. And when I walked in, it was an album of flutes. She had just made this album that was all about flautists and creating this kind of alternative world, this utopian space that was in her head, and we were trying to recreate kind of in a kind of straightforward concert festivals we were doing, but we were still trying to push the boundaries and to have lots of kind of theatrical elements to it. And then she turned around and said that she had this bigger concept, which was Cornucopia, the show you saw, and she wanted to expand out, so it would be layers of projection, an LED 3D kind of 3D projection almost with gauzes and things, and she then of course was looking to me from a sort of sound point of view to say, well, look, we went to see it was actually the Harry Potter Cursed Child, and she had seen that show and taken inspiration from that, and was like, I want to do a theatrical show like that, but in a music setting for my music. So that was kind of the initial remit. Now obviously it developed from there into something completely different, but so I've never been a sort of straightforward sound designer. I have worked on some theatrical projects, and I've worked in a lot of music, and I've done some sort of TV and filmy bits, but I've never been kind of like, I'm all over the place. I jack of all trades maybe. So for this, it was kind of like, okay, what do we do? Do we get in a brand new sound designer? And we talked about that, talked to a few big names. But then in the end, we kind of settled with actually working together from scratch on this. So there was a bit of exploration. We didn't really know what we were going to do.
Wonderful.
But the key thing for her was she wanted it definitely to be immersive, and she wanted to have a project that was in ideally surround sound. And now she'd done some surround stuff before, but on a kind of very scaled back. I think it might have been a quad system, a bit, like the Pink Floyd back in the day. But she was like, no, let's see what else is out there. So I had to go on a path where I would find out what could be done in a live environment with allow me to use live instruments in a kind of immersive surround format. And I didn't really know anything about object-based mixing at that time, so it's not something I had come across. So there was a period of research really where I was like, what products are out there, what can be done. And at that point I started exploring different brands. L-Acoustics had their Lisa formats, and then DMB had Soundscape. Maya Sound, which is another PA manufacturer, had something else. I was looking at Dolby, of course, Dolby Atmos, which was sort of been around in film for a long time, but at the time there wasn't really a live processor. So I was kind of like, oh, how are we going to do this? And tried out all the products. Did some research in going to different companies and taking multi-tracks into there and seeing how their systems worked. And in the end, we settled on the DMB Soundscape, which was the utility we used to mix in, which is an object-based format that allows you to take multiple inputs and in a live sound environment to position them anywhere in a venue in a 360-degree environment and scale the show from size to size. So we had a programming session in a studio. Well, it started in a lighthouse, which was mainly Björk herself just playing around with sounds. And then we scaled to a studio, and then up to a film studio, and then into a theatre, and then eventually into arenas. So it was a long journey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't really answer your question there, though, did I?
No, it's totally fine. That's what I wanted to hear, just like your raw thoughts on it. And as you just mentioned, that like the end result is amazing. And if people haven't seen it yet, now there's like a video on demand, I think, on Apple, and there's going to be like something.
There's a kind of abridged version that's on Apple at the moment, and then I think it's going into cinemas in the next couple of months.
Ooh, that's good to know, because I'm gonna definitely check that out again on a good system.
I believe it's in March. Yeah,
wonderful. So And brings me also to my next question. Like, how did you come to work with Björk? I mean, you said you worked on the album with her before, but how did that come to be? Did she just reach out to you by random, or did you know her for a long time already?
Oh, actually, no. I mistold you that. I didn't actually work on the album with her. No, it was when she was promoting that album. She
I see.
was looking for a live sound engineer. So her old engineer, Dave Bracey, his great engineer, he was very, very busy with other acts. I think it was Adele he was working with, and she was doing her residency, so he wasn't unavailable. So I actually got just a random inquiry one day from Björk's management saying, your name has ended up in a hat of names. I'm not even sure if they told me who the artist was. I think they did, but they were like, could you send us some stuff? I was like, okay. So I was asked if I could send some sort of demonstrations of live mixes, but with a particular emphasis on reverbs and effects. I was like, I've never, I've been in the industry a long time now, 20 plus years. I'd never kind of had that kind of audition process before. But it turns out she was looking for something very specific. She had been very focused on the album she was working on the flutes, the panning of them, the reverb sends and returns, and how she had placed them on the album with her engineer. And she wanted that to transfer live. So there was this kind of process where I was throwing files backwards and forwards and hearing nothing for months. And I was like, I'd almost forgotten about it. I was kind of, that would be great if I got to work with her. Heard nothing. And then one day out of the blue, I got a phone call saying, oh yeah, by the way, are you available to come to Iceland next week? I was like, yeah, okay. So I made myself available. And
of course.
Then I've been kind of with her working ever since. And it was interesting because I moved into the first project having never really done a heavily time-coded show or anything, but she was really specific about this panning. So I made a point of going into a demo room studio, and I got them to send me all of the album Pro Tools files, which had all of the data in it. So basically got all of the album mix files, and I spent a few days pre-programming a digico desk to timecode against the multi-tracks of that, so that when we went into the live environment, I had that data already programmed in snapshots that were time-coded. I was kind of making an assumption here that we were going to do at least some of the songs to either track or to click track, and that the time code would carry over, and luckily for me, that did happen. But it was good because it meant that when we first started working together and I'd never met her, I think she got a feel that I had done my homework, that I already knew what she was looking for. And because I was using the same Pro Tools session as my basis, so the same reverb returns and sends and effects in a live environment, and I had done the programming to timecode for the panning in the PA, I think she kind of felt like, well, I'm kind of hearing the album, but these flute players on stage are actually playing live. So kind of it was a good start, a good footing to start the working relationship. And then since then, it's always been kind of a strive to make it sound like the album, but not identical.
Yeah, just the essence of it, right?
Has to be organic, but there's always elements that she's like, I want to keep that. I thought a lot about that, so I want that to be part of the live show. So that's kind of the path we've been on for about 7 years now, I think.
That's a long time, yeah.
Yeah, well, COVID hit in the middle. We did have a little break,
of course,
to be honest. And then obviously at the moment she's busy on something else, so it's not a constant thing. But the Cornucopia show, that was a kind of 5 or 6 years from when we first did the Shed in New York, which was the opening to the last arena run, which was it last year? Well, or
I think so.
Actually, yeah, April. I was over in April last year working on the film soundtrack, so that would be kind of almost the end of that project. The natural end.
Yeah, and as we talked about briefly before, there's like many microphones on stage that are used to like live inputs and then mixed around. Can you maybe talk a bit about like what's very unique. I mean, one of the things, of course, is like the reverb chamber on stage, right? That's something that's crazy.
Yeah, that was a good one. So she decided. She sent me a video of some Icelandic. It's almost like an art installation in the mountains somewhere. Somebody had made these kind of caves that you go and sit in, and they're kind of like reverb chambers, as you just said. And she was like, I kind of want to do this on stage. I want. It's amazing. It feels fabulous. I love singing in it. So I want to make a reverb chamber on stage. And we were like, okay, here we go. So we thought about it, and we called up Arup, who were a kind of acoustics, consultation company, and they said, yeah, we can actually help you with that. We can, if you want to give us some ideas of the shape and the size, we can do designs, and then we can do acoustic mapping models of how it might sound. So the process was her coming up with James Merry, who is Björk's kind of muse artistic partner. They were coming up with shapes that fit in with the production, and then they were like, okay, how will this sound if it was a big reverb chamber on stage? Can we make it this height? Can we make it a bit taller? Can we make it wider? And we actually went to Arup in London and sat in an anechoic studio with, I couldn't tell you how many speakers, maybe 40 speakers surrounding us. And the boss was sat there with a mic, singing down the mic, and we were hearing in real time different spaces, and they would show us, okay, we're going to change to this space now. So there was a design done for a physical reverb chamber, and then it had to go off to be built. And her team in Iceland, they like a challenge. So it was built, a physical chamber, weighs a lot, had to be craned into stage every day, built in different tiers, and we had a few different formats of it. Some were bigger than others. So the shed in New York was a residency, so we could take the bigger chamber, and we didn't. Time constraints weren't there. When we did the arenas, I think we used a slightly smaller one, mainly to do, and they changed the process of how it's built to make it easy to build in one day, as opposed to a week's load in. So, but in essence, it's a reverb chamber with a door, the perspex door that seals her in. So she'll walk in with either herself or a bunch of flute players, stand there, the door will seal in, and you won't really hear the reverb kick in until the seal happens. It's very weird. The sound kind of escapes the chamber, but as soon as that door seals, you can physically hear like the reverb start to echo around. And then the next question was, how are we going to mic that up? So again, no real clue. So it's experimenting, and in the end, I ended up sticking some DPA 4060 omnidirectionals to the walls. So I did a kind of quad thing where the chamber itself was round, but we put one on each wall, and then I had a Telefunken was the original microphone, extremely expensive one that is her own personal one she uses in the studio. We had that as the main vocal mic she would sing down. She sort of stand at a decent distance from it and sing into it. And then a couple of DPA, I can't remember the exact model, but small diaphragm condensers in the roof, just to give me options. And then what I did with that would be the question, because it depended on the song. So there were some songs. So going back to the soundscape, you can kind of treat the theatrical use of that hardware in a live show in different ways. You can either position everything where it is on stage, and the way the system is designed that there's a lot of speaker sources, and if you position, I don't know, a person in a position on stage, the first speaker closest to it will be the first one that fires, and then the next speakers nearer will fire. Or the other choice was, because I had a whole 360-degree system, some songs we were like, actually, we're going to put you in the reverb chamber with her. So and then so I was using like the wall microphones and stuff, and putting that, enveloping the whole audience, so using the whole 360 degree system in that process. The other songs I would position her in the reverb chamber, you would hear it from emanating from that exact location on stage. So it really depended on the song as to how we treated it, but in essence, I had a big reverb chamber. She could go in, and then I had a bunch of microphones in there. And the one thing she was adamant on was we're not going to fake this. So
it's going to be the real deal. Yeah,
it's the real deal. And it wasn't the kind of cleanest cathedral reverb. It's not a long reverb. It's almost, there's a lot of low mid in there, which I did EQ out. But yeah, it had to be the real thing. She didn't want us to be faking it with a plug-in when she walked in there. So yeah, that was the brief. Yeah, good fun. So that was one element. What else did we have on stage? We had obviously there were 7 flute players who played also clarinets, piccolo and stuff. Manu Delago, who is the percussionist, plays a whole world of things. So there's an allophone, which is like I can only describe it like a glockenspiel made of bells. It's very long. So there would be 3 microphones on that, just the left, center, right. Then he plays all sorts of digital percussion sounds. And what else did he?
There were the water drums.
Water
right?
drums, yeah. That was an interesting one.
Maybe just for context, like if people don't know what water drums are, it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically it's an upside down bowl you place into the water, and if you tap on it, it makes a drumming sound.
Yeah.
That's the basic. I mean, it's very basic, but And as I saw on stage, because I checked it out, of course, during the show. As I think there were underwater microphones, pickup microphones there, right? In the water, picking up the sound from the water, which I found like just amazing, because it's just the kind of thing I also do in the studio to experiment with sound design. And I saw it and I was like, oh man, I'm going to look forward to how this sounds on stage. It's going to be amazing. And it sounded great.
Well, it's exactly that we didn't really, again, the water drum thing came from, I'm not sure if that came from Manu or Björk herself. And they're actually, he calls them calabashes. I think it's a pumpkin. It's a dried out pumpkin.
Oh, really?
That's cut in half. So yeah, we had to make sure it was dried after the show every night to make sure it, didn't go moldy or anything. We had a few spares. So a dried out pumpkin that's placed in a container of water and then hit. It's like a percussion instrument. But depending on how it floats, depends on the tone. And then there was another one that was not in the water that had a Beta 91 kick drum mic under it and a contact mic on it, and he was playing that like a snare and a kick, a bit like you would with a cajon.
Yeah.
And then the water. There was also we were just experimenting. So then Berger, the musical director, turned up one day with this mic, aquaphonic mic. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Hydrophonic. That's it. Yes. Essentially, he bought it for recording whale song in Iceland. So we were like, let's see what we can do with this. So Manu was pouring water over the microphone, and we were adding big reverbs to it to kind of create, that kind of reverberant water effect. And it kind of like the process just went on like that. Oh, let's just keep experimenting. So there was definitely these containers of water with these pumpkins and the microphone, and that became the big basis of the kind of backing for the song. And then we did some recording of some of that, which we then chopped up and turned into loops and samples and stuff that also got put into the surrounds of the venue. So as the song builds, most of it's all acoustic coming from Manu, definitely at the beginning, but then as the song builds, you start getting these extra layers of sound effects that were recorded and then placed into the whole room in the surround sound environment. So hopefully it makes for quite a big experience and a bit of a journey in that song. So,
I can definitely attest that it did. It blew me away, because at the beginning I heard the sound and I recognized some of the textures of experimenting myself with underwater mics and stuff like that, and was like, oh, that's amazing, and that's someone who's really skilled in using that technology. And like you said, and it builds up and it envelops you, and it's it was a wonderful piece of the performance, for sure.
It was one of my favorite moments of that show as well. Blissing Me is the song.
Wonderful. So you're gonna have with the Björk show, you had a lot of unique challenges and stuff like that, right? It's I mean, it's out of the ordinary overall.
Yeah, and the other instruments as well. There was a magnetic harp, which I'd never is new. I don't think anyone's ever. I think there's only one in the world. We had it on tour with us, but it's quite a delicate instrument. So again, Björk is very keen that we don't fake things. That if it's an instrument, it's played live. There is obviously some track involved logistically with some of the songs, but wherever we can, we would try and play it live. And the magnetic harp is like it's almost like an EBow, with an electric guitar. Yeah. There's buttons you press, and they're capacitance sensitive. So you would press the buttons, and that would trigger a magnet over a string to fire off a sound. And but the only problem we did have was it was super delicate. So we did sample it as a backup in case we broke it or there were any issues with it. And I got caught in the middle of a sampling session by her. She gave me the look of, don't go there. But we were fine. We did use the harp live, and it was that was a great instrument. What else do we have? Just all sorts. You never quite know what she's going to come up with. There was even like old school things, like there was a MIDI saxophone that Björk played in the middle of one of the songs at the end. Does a MIDI sax solo. And the Whirlies. I don't know if you saw the Whirlies. So there's a song called Features Creatures, and it's the sound it's kind of hard to explain. You possibly just have to listen to the album, but it's actually a kid's toy where people grab a tube and they're spinning it around the head, it makes this noise that is like it's kind of like wind. Essentially. That's exactly it. And the faster you spin it, the higher it goes, and then it goes lower. So we had 7 flute players playing those Whirlies, and then again it was like, well, how do you mic that up? But I worked out that the sound kind of comes from the end that you're holding on to. So they had a DPA microphone as their head-worn microphone was what we were using for the flutes. So I just got them to hold the Whirly up to the microphone, spin it around the head, and we were using that live. And then that would be put in an object in the room. So for the object-based mixing, that would be put, and then that would be spinning around the room, around the audience's head. So, that was another process. So, plenty of songs with lots of different inputs and lots of different ideas. Even down to like massive organ pipes. I'm not sure if they were still in the show when you saw it. That dropped in from the ceiling.
No, it wasn't. Unfortunately,
they might have got cut for the one of the arena runs because they were hard logistically to put in a day. But for the residencies, she made these organ pipes that must have been 30 meters long, like massive things with a massive motor on the back of it. And at the beginning of a song called Body Memory, that would drop in from the ceiling on a kinesis motor just above the audience's head, and then someone would flick a switch, it would come on, and there would be this, it basically resonated at about 40-50 hertz and just gave out this massive sub. And then we did mic it up. We put microphones inside it and contact mics on it and stuff, but honestly the mic, the pipe itself was kind of doing
it's already doing the work, right?
So I did have to again then sample that because it became part of the sound of the song. So then when we lost it on one of the later tours because we couldn't logistically bring it, I just took a sample and would play that off QLab during the show because it had to have, it was part of the intro of the song, so it was missing acoustically.
Oh man, that's wonderful. It's just such a range of things, and maybe one other question about that, and then we'll go to other topics. But how do you keep track of all that kind of like inputs, outputs, and I mean, just like you said, you sample stuff like that, but you have to have a list of, I don't know, over 120 different inputs, and some of them are used for different things. Just like you said, we have the singer's microphone on their mouthpiece, and then they use it also for the whirlies. So how do you organize all that stuff? It's like, I hope software helps you with that, but
it's there's a lot of figuring spreadsheets, to be honest. A lot of spreadsheets, a lot of writing down things and snapshots. So I rely heavily on the Digico desks for my programming because they're really, really good for snapshotting, and you can put things in and out of a scope. But I can also write notes in a snapshot. So there could be a song where there's only 5 snapshots, or there could be a song where there's 80 snapshots.
Can you briefly explain what a snapshot is for people that are not aware about that?
Yeah, it's kind of essentially it's a queuing system where I can record automated data and say to a desk at this moment, or I can manually fire a snapshot, and it might do something. It might just be as simple as a fader movement. Turn up a fader that's needed, or take it down, or it might be send a instrument to an effect, and again with the object-based 360 system, where you had another snapshotting system that was dealing with the object positions as well. So I actually had quite a complicated setup of a queuing system for the D&B soundscape, a desk snapshotting system that was doing mixing moves essentially and effects changes, and then I also had live Pro Tools effects. So I had, as we talked about earlier, I had taken the studio album effects, and the easiest way for me to use those sessions was actually to use that session in one big session in Pro Tools and route in and out of Pro Tools live and sync that to timecode, which when I told Avid what I was doing, they said, please don't tell anyone, because we don't want anyone else doing that live, because it's not recommended. Like Pro Tools isn't really known for being a live effects environment unless you're using their own consoles, which are designed for that. But the way I was doing it was a bit of a workaround. So the idea being that with the snapshot, I can make changes and I can record those changes, but it's not necessarily a global thing where it's like, right, this song I'm snapshotting absolutely everything. I might just decide to tell the desk only recall something for this channel, or only update a certain amount of channels. You know, it's so there's a lot of things in the desk I would leave in a safe mode or take out of the scope. It becomes quite hard work on the brain, but it does mean that down the line, when you start those things that, like you said, how do you keep track of it? You almost don't need to, because it's saved in the console. So there are, the programming you're doing, you're committing, and then hope, you can always undo what you've done.
Sure.
Or the other problem we had was sometimes there would be an edit. So we were working to timecode for a lot of the songs. Some songs were completely free time. There was no timecode. But the ones were time coded, and then maybe one day she would come in and say, I think this song should be 1 BPM faster. But with timecode, that doesn't necessarily correspond. So we would have to then go through every single snapshot and change it. And then she'd come in later and be like, nah, it was better the way it was before. So we would, there's a process there. You have to go through it.
Experimentation,
programming is... It was a heavily programmed show, but at the end of the day, you still have to mix the show. You can't just pre-program it and then sit back and let the board do it, because there's too many live elements for that to be a thing.
Yeah, you need to be an octopus with many arms to do that all at the same time.
There's too many moves, and as I say, with the object-based system, even just tracking musicians around the stage and positioning them in their right spots, that requires snapshots as well. So you might have the flute players all in one part of the stage, and then for the next section of a song they're moving to somewhere else. You can put physical trackers on the humans and mix in that way, but with our costumes that wasn't really a practical idea. So in the end, most of it was choreographed, apart from Björk herself, who could do anything at any time. You never know where she might go or what she might do, so it's part of the fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and going a bit away from Björk, because I could talk with you about her and her music and shows for hours, but we're just not gonna geek out on her for the whole show yet. So you've worked with a diverse range of many artists, not just Björk, but like people like Amy Winehouse, for example, which is an iconic singer. And I wanted to ask you, what have been like some of your most memorable moments of your many years of sound? Oh,
interesting. I've had lots of lots over the years. I mean, the Amy thing was I was doing monitors for her on the last run, so it's kind of an almost like a sad time in terms of how things went, but an absolutely fantastic band and fantastic performances. So it was kind of that has fond memories attached to it, but kind of a sad end at the end. But and then I've been very lucky to work with lots of kind of slightly out there acts. You know, the PJ Harvey thing, again doing monitors for her. But and then I was out with Florence and the Machine with her first album.
Wonderful band as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun, and that was funny because I was kind of brought on board as a tech. Really, I wasn't meant to be mixing, but then when Lungs came out, she was really like it was kind of a very quick success happened, and it went from quite small shows to quite big events. And then, of course, her being a very creative person wanted to expand, so they added in a gospel choir and a string section to festivals, which has a load of logistical things. So I got brought in really to submix the strings and the gospel choir on that particular run, and then there was another guy mixing the band and monitors. So yeah, that was great fun. I did that for about a year, all around the world, doing kind of shows everywhere and festivals, and yeah, so that was good fun. And then for years I worked with a band, a folk rock band called Fairport Convention, which is probably in Germany or won't have heard, but they are a kind of classic band from the 60s, 70s. That continued on, and I produced their album. So I worked for them for 20 plus years. Started doing stuff with them in my early 20s, and then became their studio engineer as well. And the thing with them was it was my parents' favourite band growing up.
That's wonderful.
So I was like going to their gigs as a child, and then when I was about 18, 19, I got work experience with them, and then in my 20s started doing tours with them. So for me, it was kind of a funny one, because suddenly I've gone from going to these concerts as a child, and they had their own festival, and going to their festivals as a child, to actually being their studio engineer, producer, and then the live sound engineer. So for me, although it's a lesser known band, that one always meant a lot in terms of kind of personal achievement and growth. So yeah, lots of albums with them over the years, and lots of hundreds and hundreds of gigs. And then there's just I've lots of classical projects as well. I used to work on the BBC Proms, and done lots of orchestral work at the Royal Albert Hall. I love doing orchestral work, and again, Björk does the orchestral thing that she sometimes does. So we did Coachella a couple of years ago, which was fun, but with an orchestra instead of a band. So
that's an interesting setting, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Coachella, it was tricky because you're in a windy desert with a lot of open condenser mics. So I'm not going to say it was the easiest, but it was still a spectacle, and it was different. And for that festival, not what they were expecting, which was kind of, I think, the point. But,
absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, I've been very lucky over the years to work with kind of like a range of things. It's not just classical or theatrical stuff or pop or rock. It could be, it's I kind of like float from one project to the next and just see what comes along, see what presents itself.
Yeah, and maybe going to the Coachella gig a bit, because you just mentioned it was like a windy desert. And I would like to know, do you have like any tips or any tricks up your sleeve for doing quality live performances in challenging venues or outdoor, especially outdoor settings? I must imagine it's going to be interesting, because if the weather changes, the sound changes, right? You got to be on your toes.
Well, yeah. And in that particular thing, you just, with the orchestral, we just double mic'd it. So we had condenser mics between sections, but every single player had a DPA 4099 close mic'd on them, with a pop shield, and the wind picks up, you're still fighting, but it at least gives you a chance. So I think in that scenario, the key thing is like plan for the worst case scenario, And if you can get away with using the kind of more distant mics, you will.
Mm-hmm.
But in that scenario, actually, no, I had to use the DPAs because it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare when the wind picked up. I mean, we also had like 800 drones on it, which was part of the show, and I think they had a tough time as well, getting the drones to not fall out of the sky because of the wind. But,
Yeah.
you know.
Oof.
But yeah, and outdoor festivals. I mean, there's always weather as well. I remember doing a show in Italy where they said it never rains. It will never rain here. The stage was uncovered, and we were hit by like a freak thunderstorm during the opening sequence of the show, and the whole thing got cancelled. We had to go back to. It was in Venice. We had to go back to Venice a month later and put the show back in, but having dried out the entire set in a warehouse because it all got completely almost destroyed. So yeah, you just have to. Weather can be a factor. Indoors, not so much.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But yeah, so a lot of adjustments, and just like you said, planning for the worst is always good.
Planning for the worst, and yeah, of course, adjustments in terms of. I mean, if you've got microphones with a load of wind coming down them, you're going to have to turn the high pass up, get rid of the, if it's blowing across the capsule, and use pop shields, wind shields. If you're outdoors, lots of wind shields all over the place. It's the only way really to guarantee. And try not to get things wet if you can avoid it.
It's always good with technology, yeah.
But as we touched on earlier, there are obviously acoustic changes you can that happen as well during nighttime. In the difference between a sound check in the day and in the nighttime, the PA will respond differently. The sound will travel differently. It might refract away from the surface of the earth. So you end up making adjustments to the PA. You might rely heavily on delay speakers potentially on the bigger venues because the sound doesn't travel as far. And in a windy environment, the wind, and there's nothing you can do about this, the wind will just blow the sound away. It will just blow the top end away. So I'm a big believer on the bigger outdoor events of making sure that there are properly deployed delay speakers across the venue, so you're not just in relying on one big line array just to get to the back. Because whilst on paper it works, as soon as the elements pick up, it doesn't. So if you have something that can, a delay speaker that's further down the venue that can then pick up, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that, and we have this big festival here in Nuremberg near where I live. It's Rock and Park. Yeah. Okay, nice. And like when the setup was great, especially on the main stage, on the big Zeppelin Field stage, it was really cool, especially if you're in a good position to hear these kinds of delay speakers doing their work. And just like I said, even if the wind picks up or if it's rainy, I remember one concert, Prodigy back then, and it was like during rain in the mud, and we were like all covered in mud and dancing to Prodigy, which was pretty fitting, to be honest. It was amazing. Like Warrior song came on and everyone was looking like actual warriors. And the sound was great because it was just enveloping around us. And I'm pretty sure it came from all those good setup speakers. Because it was windy and rainy, and like the rain also does add a sound to it, right? But like they always like cut through with their sound because I feel like Prodigy always is a few dB higher than any other band before that.
I think so, and I think John, who does their front of house, I think he's still doing them. I think he brings extra subs and stuff. I believe. I'm guessing. I felt my actual bones shaking inside my body, which was a good experience, but pretty intense. Yeah, I've experienced their set a few times, and it's great. Yeah. It's great fun.
It was wonderful. Yeah,
but yeah, I think with a lot of festivals these days, everything's a bit budget dependent. So you're always, and people are always pushing back. But I think a lot of the technology's come on a lot, and I think people are deploying PAs very well now, and people are fighting for the best they can for the audience, because at the end of the day, the person who's paid money for a ticket doesn't want to come away disappointed and say, I couldn't hear it at the back. And you can't always be the person down the front, so it's important to get that right. So as a front of house engineer, yes, I do my mix. We talked about the mix position, but I have to be really trusting that the person who's deploying the sound system has actually done a good job. And I personally will always make a point of walking an entire venue, if even in a stadium or big arenas. I'll probably play some multi-tracks back and walk away from the desk and just walk around the entire venue and just double check that there's no seats that aren't being covered, because I think it's really important. One of my big hates is when you get a seating plan for a venue and the promoter says, these seats aren't on sale, and you're like, okay, will we cover them with PA? And they say, oh no, there's no need, those are off sale. And then 10 minutes before doors, you look up and you're like, that seating bank is full. And you say, who's up there? And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's all the guests from the band, all the people who are going to talk to them after the show. Yeah, because we didn't. They have more guests, so we put them up there. And you're like, there's no PA up there. They can't see anything. They can't see the stage. It's terrible when that happens. So I've become quite a stickler for actually putting in extra speakers if I can, if the budget allows, and saying we'll turn them off. If we look up and at the beginning of the show and there's no one there, we'll turn them off. That's absolutely fine. But I'd rather cover every seat and make sure that people are getting a good experience throughout the venue.
That's why I like you.
Yeah, it's a big part of the job. It's not just about mixing and making sure that your front of house mix is good and balanced and that people are enjoying that. But you have to make sure that everybody's looked after, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, because it's always a kind of thing. For me, it's always a kind of thing. If I want to see a band live, do I go for the visual or for the audio experience? Like if I want to see more visuals or want to see them up close, I would say I would go more to the front. But I'm right up front is not the best sound. Never.
No, it's hard. It's very hard to. Yeah. Even if you put in big front fills, and there's always a compromise. I mean, I compromised a lot with Cornucopia because it was a very visual heavy show and a lot of projection. So PA lines had to be a lot higher than I would normally like. And then you're trying to put speakers in on the front of the stage, and she's like, I don't want them there. They don't look like
they don't fit
the utopian planet I'm trying to make. So we had a lot of discussions about what we could and couldn't do, a lot of compromises. Sometimes I'd win, other times I'd have to, back down. But I'd try very hard to kind of ensure that everywhere's covered. But as you say, down the front, which is normally the expensive tickets and the ones who have the biggest opinions, but often the super fans who are a little bit more forgiving. So it kind of works in both ways.
Of course.
But I do, and particularly on that show, the best place is in the middle. And then, so you would hope that when they're seating the guests, they don't put them right down the front, because although it is a great seat to have, it's not necessarily the best visual and audio experience, I think, anyway. Yeah. And also, and on a show with a lot of projection and visual elements, you need to be a little bit further back away from the stage to get a feel for the whole event. If you're down the front and yes, you're seeing the person up close, but you're not really experiencing absolutely everything. Yeah. And you're right though. There is a whole compromise now about there's some people have relay screens on shows and stuff. I mean, this has nothing to do with audio, which I know is what your podcast's about. But it's fine. I see lots of different complaints from people saying, "Oh, I went to this concert and I couldn't really see what was going on because they didn't have the what we call IMAG screens, the relay." But I kind of understand that sometimes they choose not to do that because those camera shots aren't any different to somebody being right down the front. So that's not what they want from the concert. So I don't know. There's a compromise. There's a different vision. Every artist and our director has a different idea as to what they're trying to achieve. I'll stick to sound, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I can go with that, and maybe another question that came to my mind is what are the most rewarding aspects of your job? Where's the thing where it's you go home at the end of the day and say, oh damn, I did a good job, it felt amazing. I mean, of course, if the PA is great and you can make the sound great for a venue, right?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I'm my own worst critic. I can only say in 20 plus years of doing this, I've probably only had half a dozen shows where I've actually gone home and be like, I'm really chuffed with that. That was amazing. Because there's always something. There's always And for me, there's a zone as well in my head. There's a headspace where I'm mixing, where I get really hyper into like I can't even describe it, but like into a zone where I'm so hypercritical and listening that I always can't enjoy the show. And I'm constantly listening to the tiniest little thing and making adjustments. And it's kind of hard to bring yourself out of that and take a step back sometimes and be like, okay, let's listen to the whole thing. Oh, actually, that's fine. Because I might, you don't want to disappear down a rabbit hole and just be EQing a hi-hat or something, when
Yes.
in the middle of a show when then you're forgetting that there's some backy vocals that can't be heard. So I guess your question was, what was the question? It was
What are the most rewarding aspects of your job?
the
When
rewarding
do you
aspects.
feel-
I think it's rewarding when people say nice things, of course. When they go to a concert and they say, "Oh, that was amazing," or they really enjoyed it for whatever element, especially if it's an element that you've added in, like you were talking about the water drum. So it's something that other people maybe are not doing in a concert, and you're like, that's new to us and it's new to you and you enjoyed it. That's very rewarding to hear. It's the funny one for me is most of the time when I come away and think that was a great gig, I really enjoyed that, that's normally the ones where the bands come off stage and say, oh, that was a bit rubbish tonight, I really didn't enjoy that. There's often a different connect between what we feel out front to what they feel on stage.
Yeah.
Sometimes it aligns entirely and everybody goes, that was just the best gig ever. But I've seen it quite a lot where everybody has a different opinion of the same show and you're like, oh, I didn't see it like that. I really didn't. But I mean, for me, it's been rewarding, obviously, working with an artist like Björk, who is so creative and being involved on the creative side. So being allowed to do sound design, help work with her own effects, and then the process of kind of from the conception of that cornucopia show right through to remixing it in Dolby Atmos for the film. That's been amazing. That's been a kind of highlight for me in terms of like a start to finish project and being kind of aware in the middle of it that we're doing something a bit special and different. We were definitely the first tour to take the D&B soundscape technology and go from a small venue to a big venue to arenas and tour it around arenas. We were the first production to ever do that. So again, that was because there were so many logistical things involved with that and paths we had to find. It was kind of like a feeling of achievement at the end when we could look back and go, oh, right, we've done that now. Brilliant. We got away with it. Or hopefully more so. But,
Oh, definitely. I can just tell you, like, from my experience, it was one of the best mixed shows I've ever heard because, first of all, like, the sheer amount of, like, instruments and people on stage and, like I said, I've checked out the stage beforehand and checked out what I could see and I saw so many little things and I was blown away by how good it sounded. I mean, it wasn't the best venue I was at, but it was overall amazing. I was very, very happy with it. So good job on that.
I can't remember if you were actually in a full 360 venue either.
No, unfortunately,
no, it wasn't.
Not. It was in Leipzig.
The 180 because we had two versions where one was it was 7 PA hangs across the front and it was kind of like an extension thing. You still had the surrounds, but they were folded down because we couldn't put in the rear speakers in a day necessarily. Yeah,
so that's why I want to go to the cinema, of course, and watch the Dolby Atmos versions to get the 360. But for me, it was just like the seeing, like the visual aspect. That's why I was seated a bit more to the back, and of course for the sound as well. But I wanted to see like this theatrical thing, and the 3D effect of the projection was just amazing. It was just so unique, and having like the artist behind a veil. Oftentimes, and also having her not being the center all the time. You could really see it was a show. It was not Björk the artist and some musicians. It was a whole show and everyone got spotlights and it was not like the artist wasn't the center of the show. The whole experience was just everything was
she's very good at taking a step back and featuring other people, whether it be Manu with his percussion or certain flute players would have their moment in the reverb chamber on her own. She doesn't. It's the choir, the massive choir. I think we haven't even mentioned them. There was a 40-piece choir, and she's very gracious like that. It's fantastic to see how she's kind of. But it's funny, like she's a kind of a shy person, which is mad to think that So it's Yeah, it was very enjoyable working on that project. I must say, and just a lovely crew, lovely production, and it makes such a difference when you're just all on the same team and working the audio, the video, the lighting. We were all, we'd stay up all night in the film studio just programming because we just wanted to be there working on it. It wasn't like it was a job, of course. We were getting paid, but it was more than that. It was a love for a creative process. So really, definitely that would be one of the highlights.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I from an audience perspective could really feel that. And as you just mentioned, like this, sometimes the band says, "Oh man, this night was shit," and you say it was amazing, and the audience maybe is also amazing. I always find that interesting, and I recently watched the Robbie Williams documentary series. I don't know if you have watched it.
I haven't seen it yet. It's on the list.
Oh yeah, check that out, because there's this one concert. It's like a very big one where he speaks about having an actual panic attack and dying on stage, basically the whole time. And the show, even now, if you watch it, you cannot see it. Like you know his stories, but it's like he is a massive showman and just delivered an amazing show. And I'm pretty sure everyone in the audience was like, "Oh, that was amazing," and he was like, "That was the worst thing I've ever did." Yeah, it's such a disconnect between the two states. That's always interesting, but
and I guess that comes from people just being hypercritical of them.
Yes, exactly. That's why I wanted to make the point, because you just said there's also this funny like meme about people doing music where it's like, check out this tutorial of 2 hours of just adjusting a snare to make it sound like in the beginning. Sometimes you're gonna go down like that and
adjust the compressor and then realize it's not actually inserted.
It's not active.
Yeah.
I fine-tuned it for 2 hours. Now it sounds amazing. I didn't activate it.
Yeah, that's I've been very guilty of that.
Me too.
Or like in the studio, spend all night mixing something and then come back the next day, press play and go, "Oh wow, that's awful."
That's horrible.
And then go back to mix revision 1.
Yeah. So, that happened to me a lot, and I now try to if I find myself into like this rut of just hyper fixating on one sound or one element of the job I'm working on, I try to just make a pause and go walk in nature for half an hour or something and come back, because you really need that reset sometimes to get that perspective. Yeah.
For sure. Or if you can walk away for a week, even better.
Yeah.
That's the slight problem with the live sound thing, is that you're always in the element there, and that's it. And then when it's done, it's done. You can listen back to a board tape potentially, but it's not recommended.
No.
And I have had that with Björk before. Very early on, she was listening and watching kind of shows afterwards and sending me notes, and I was like, "Oh, this is hard to cope with." And I remember we did all Points East, which was a big festival, and she sent me a note and she said, "Oh, the bass needs to be," I think she said, "more optimistic," but what she meant was that we need more sub bass.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Okay, what are you listening on?" And she was like, "Oh, on my iPhone." And it's a video that was recorded by someone in the audience, and I was like, "Okay, let me send you." So I sent her the left right record from the festival. It's like, "Can you listen to this in your studio and just tell me if you still feel the same?" And she came back to me and was like, "Oh, I see. Yeah, no problem." So it just goes to show, like, perspectives are completely valid, but that sometimes you have to be kind of confident what you're doing in the moment, and hope that carries through. I feel like I'm talking nonsense there.
No, anyway, it's totally. I'm with you on that. And maybe going into technology a bit, because we've mentioned it a few times, and you have been in the industry for so long now. And how do you stay updated with latest trends and advancement? Is it like, do you check out regularly new technology, or is it just if something comes up, you just go down a rabbit hole for this specific thing and try to find out what's new now?
I try and keep up to date. I must admit, I did bury my head in the sand for a while when everything was going Dante and network based. I kind of took a while to get my networking skills up to scratch so that I could deal with that, because I was always considered myself to be a mix engineer, and I was like, do I really need to know how these packets of data are transferring audio down a Cat6 cable? But I've made sure that now I'm really, really clued up on all of that stuff. But I do. I had never been to a trade show until last year when I went to ISE, which is a big And actually, that was quite kind of eye-opening. I was like, oh, there's lots of things here that I should be across. But I feel fortunate, though, that because of that last project, I got to be an early adopter of the immersive formats. So the Dolby Atmos, the Soundscape, the Lisa, I feel like I was slightly ahead of the curve there, which was... but that kind of came from her, not from me. But at the same time, I was a bit of a guinea pig as well. So when we started doing that project, the front end of the software wasn't necessarily in the best place. So I had to sign some NDAs and work with some other people who had made products. And we used them in the show that we, at the time, couldn't talk about, but now has now been released by D&B as software that... Yeah. So, yeah, I'd like to think that I was kind of, particularly on that project, ahead or...
Absolutely.
At the beginning of when it first, and now it's all taken off. Immersive shows are all over the place. There's lots of people doing it and doing it really, really well in different size venues. And just yesterday, was it the day before yesterday? I was at a Dolby Atmos seminar for some studio-based stuff, and then I've started talking with Dolby Atmos Live about. They've only have one venue at the moment in the MGM, but there's things in the pipeline, so you kind of, I don't know, it's nice to try and be involved in whatever's new. Also looking like at creative technology in Ireland, in the UK, we have the Holoplot, which is a new speaker system, which is kind of a beam steering system that allows you to zone a venue into areas. So you might you could split up a square area into sections with parametric areas where you can walk in and only hear something. Oh. So you could hear like, oh, I'm walking into this area, there's some bird tweeting, and then I'm walking over to there, and then I can hear a voiceover in French, and then over there it's in German.
That's awesome.
It's all one speaker array that's zoned up. Now that technology is what they've put into the Sphere in Vegas, and but as a company we have that, and I haven't used it in anger on a project, but I think for speaker installations in museums or immersive rooms, it could be really super interesting. So I'm keeping my eye on all of these technologies and hoping that some point a project will present itself where I can go, okay, well, let's do a hybrid holoplot soundscape, whatever. There's always ideas. Yeah, just trying to keep on top of like whatever's new.
Yeah, anything in particular that's like that excites you about the future? Like anything where you see advancements being made, or like prototypes where it's like, oh, this in this direction that might be interesting. I mean, the holoplot is probably something that's new. I
think that's probably the latest thing I've seen. But yeah, we're just trying to figure out kind of a path for it, where it sits in the market and what where it's useful. I mean, I can think of loads of corporate reasons it's useful for sorry, I can't say it. For interpretation, you have somebody sitting in different areas in different languages. That makes complete sense. From a theatrical view, obviously, if you're sat in a venue, you're in a seat, so it doesn't work for that.
Doesn't make much sense, yeah.
But if you're walking through an experience, it makes a ton of sense. So it's exciting. And obviously, they're always developing the soundscape, the Lisas, all of these things, that they're on a constant development cycle, and they're bringing out, even just like the reverb side of soundscape, they've just brought out a thing now where you can, before we were locked to the reverbs within the engine was certain rooms. Now they've brought out a thing where you can pretty much map any room. You can walk to the Royal Albert Hall with some units. I haven't seen it. I haven't hands on yet, so I'm sort of talking a bit nonsense. But and you can, within a short period of time, have done a convolution of the whole room, and then that can be put into your engine. And so, I mean, that's exciting in some respects. I'm just trying to think of like brand new technology that I'm across. I don't know.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, that sounds interesting to me. I'm really into recording convolution reverb files myself, like impulse responses. Yeah. So that's something I'm right now looking into as well, because I have a job coming up where I need to create a lot of those. So go out to actual spaces and make this, and I'm trying to find out if I can find a setup that's not just a balloon, because a balloon pop is good, and I can bring them anywhere, because sometimes I go into abandoned mine shafts and stuff like that, so I cannot bring a big PA system. But yeah, I'm trying to find out if I can find some kind of technology, portable technology to do that. So that's going to be interesting for me.
I think that's what they literally have just announced. So I can hook you up with someone.
That would be amazing.
To have a chat. Yeah, because I did that with the reverb chamber. I did a convolution of the reverb chamber just as a backup in case, or to see if I could adjust it to make it sound slightly longer and nicer. But then I was told we're not faking it. So, but yeah, there's I think that's exciting. In terms of like brand new technology, though, I'm just keeping my eyes open, or ears open to see what's next. Or maybe I should invent something.
Yeah, that would be good. If you have a problem, maybe you can invent something to fix it. Yeah,
find a solution. Yeah, I like doing that. I do like messing around in Max MSP and just I'm a bit of a geek. I did that all through uni, and there's been a few projects where I'm like, okay, it doesn't exist. I'll try and
I'll build it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's how you do it. Do you have any dream projects or collaborations that you'd love to work on in the future? Any artist or anything where it's like, oh, I would really like to do that? I don't know, making sound for a roller coaster ride.
You know what? Weirdly, I really like doing post-production stuff. I would love to do some more kind of TV or film sound design stuff.
I can just tell you it's a hard market.
Yeah, I know it's very tough, and it's not something I'm probably going to be able to break into this late in my life or career. But,
never say never.
I mean, I've done bits and bobs, and I do a lot of. It comes up. I did a thing for Trim Castle recently, which was a 100-meter wide projection, and then there was the sound design in ultra wide. That was all original content from scratch. So like I do touch on that, but I would love to get involved in something like that. That's not necessarily innovation, but yeah, in terms of dream projects, just more fun like what we've been doing. Yeah, just carry on. There are plenty of artists out there I'd love to work with, but I don't want to name names in case
Yeah, it's totally
jinx
fine.
it. Yeah,
but, you're right.
Hopefully, the phone keeps ringing. I mean, I'm not touring as much as I used to, so that's always hard to keep the momentum going.
Of course.
But that's just because, life comes along and you have children and you have to be home more. That's a partly reason why a bit more some sort of studio-based sound design would be helpful. But to be honest, I love recording music albums as well, so maybe I could just do a bit more of that as well. But I do have this day job with creative technology is great because there are projects that come along. A lot of our work is corporate or TV broadcasts and stuff, which is straightforward stuff. But then occasionally I get these little projects that come along that are like creative sound designs for videos or projection mapping or there's another thing I'm working for a big client that will involve working with original DJ artists, but then stemming all of their music into a 360-degree project, and putting that into various venues. So, there's always like little creative routes, and I try and steer my work that way if I can, wherever possible.
Absolutely. Like speaking of music recording, I'd really love to do some more recording of musicians because I've just done it a couple of times, and just for like artists I know, like very small ones that don't do commercially stuff. But recently, like I talked about the abandoned mineshaft, and I keep talking about that because it's one of my favorite locations to record in. And we've brought a friend of mine, or my cousin that plays the acoustic guitar, and we recorded him inside this cave.
That's
and
cool.
it was so cool because you didn't have any traffic, air, or sound from outside, no birds, because it was just deep in the mine, right? But you had like droplets coming down and this nice cave reverb. So we were doing some tests already, and the first recording sounded already pretty good, but I want to do like a full-on thing with video with that. And that's something that would be really interesting to do in the future, to do more recording outside of the studio and have some more raw, I don't know, lively, unique kind of sounds, because there are a lot of great recordings. And of course, if you have a great studio, it's going to sound great. But the kind of, I don't know, recording of nature with music together, I always love.
I think that's a great thing. I remember there being a band, Young and the Giant, who did a load of live recordings all around the place, and it seemed to be them outdoors, standing around, just singing on mountaintops and stuff. And actually, Manu, the Björk's percussionist, did a whole album of him climbing mountains with his musicians and playing percussion up there, playing together, doing I think it was a whole album he did.
Wonderful.
That was really good. And he made a film about it. So that kind of stuff, I think, is really creative. And yeah, getting back to nature is definitely a thing. I mean, I should spend more time looking into that as well myself. Especially over here in Ireland, we've got a lot of countryside.
Yeah, you got wonderful nature for sure.
The Björk album, it was all about birdsong. There was a lot of Venezuelan birdsong from an album by John C. Roach. Have you come across it? So there were a lot of samples from that used and then layered up against recordings she did. I wasn't involved with that section, I'm afraid, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How did you end up down the mine? What was who came up with that idea?
Oh, I needed sounds from inside a cave, and I wanted to have the real thing, and I didn't want to buy some kind of sound library. Also, there wasn't like a cave sound library. So, my cousin is like a exploration person, and he has like, hey, I have this mineshaft, and it's like, oh, it's perfect. I need mineshaft sounds, like, right? I need cave dripping sounds without any nature behind them, and so I got the real deal, and it's in a game, or it's going to be in the game when it's going to be out, and it feels just so good. And I've told the story before, but when we put that in the game and we had a demo out, like the rewarding thing for me was I read a comment from someone who was like, oh, I used to go caving in my teens here in America, and it sounded just like this. It felt like I was really there, and so for me it was such a rewarding feeling to hear that someone hearing that sound in a game recognizes that feeling of, okay, this is a real sound. It's not just like dripping electronically, or not just a tap or something with reverb. It's the real deal, and
they've made that proper connection
absolutely
to the original.
And that's something that I love to do in my work, go out to real places and record the real thing, even if it's sometimes not the cleanest, because the underlying emotional connection is something that I feel is important to transport. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and as I said, that's a question that I always ask my guests, and I'm interested to hear what your answer is. And it is, what is the first sound you ever recorded, and why did you record it?
Oh, wow. The first sound? I must have been very young on a 4-track. Probably me playing guitar terribly bad and trying to make a demo on a tape 4-track when I was a kid. Ever since I was a child, I was really early on trying to get into recording things. I was either going to be a musician. I did do a music degree. I was either going to be a musician, or then I realised I wasn't the best at like performance in terms of like I played trombone and guitars and stuff. But so then I stopped recording myself and started recording other people, and I think that was a better move. But yeah, that was probably the first sound I ever recorded. Yes. Would just be myself in my bedroom with a 4-track tape machine. Trying to write the next pop hit and realizing that it wasn't very good.
But then you worked with great artists that did like maybe massive hits, right? So
yeah, luckily they are much better than me. Yeah. And yeah, the Grammys have all gone in their directions, not mine. But no, it's that would be the earliest. Yeah, I did some pretty crazy things in uni. I was a bit like you're describing. Yeah, it was more kind of sort of driving cars over microphones and all sorts of things, like to capture things and manipulating my trombone to sound like something else. But
so sound design early on and experimentation. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't really answer the question very well because I'm too old. It's a long time ago.
No, that's perfect, because it's just the question is just aimed to like get you into a kind of other headspace and think of something. And sometimes something comes up, it's like, oh yeah, just like you just said, like during uni, you used to drive over microphones. That's an interesting tidbit that I wouldn't have heard otherwise. So
definitely remember doing that one.
Did the microphone survive?
Yeah, that one did. Yeah, it was lucky as well because I'd borrowed it from the university. It was like a 4-on-4 or something. It was like,
oh wow.
Yeah, it wasn't probably the best move, but
sometimes you gotta be bold.
Yeah, you do what you can with what you can find.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think that's all the questions I have. So anything else that you want to shout out, any upcoming projects, anything you're really passionate about for the end?
I'm not really, no, there's nothing I'm kind of self-promoting at the moment. Just always looking for the next fun creative project to get involved with, really. So yeah, if anybody has anything that they fancy, I'd love to hear from them.
Awesome. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show. I'm glad it happened finally. We had such a nice talk at the concert, and we've been trying to find a date ever since, and it was hard on both of us. Busy life. But thank you again for being on the show, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me, and can't wait to listen.
Thank you. Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.